Everyone's sort of looking at how we can create more automation to help drive agents. I actually think the big issue is enterprise has a much better idea on how they're thinking about workflows that they want to automate. But the holy grail here is the consumer. And I think that's where it's been harder because consumers don't think in that way. They do something and they don't think about, oh, I could automate this. That's not obvious, right?
Hey everyone, this is Alistair, and welcome back to the Venture Variety Show. This is a podcast where we talk with founders, builders, and platform folks who are shaping the future of startups and venture and AI. Today's guest is Raj Singh. Raj is VP of Product at Mozilla, and Raj is a serial founder whose past startups have included Pulse and Tempo AI, which were acquired by Mozilla and Salesforce, respectively. So let's get into it. Here's Raj Singh from Mozilla. Well, Raj, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you focus on.
I'm Raj Singh. I'm VP of Product at Mozilla. I'm focused on new products in the small business area. So we're looking at new things that we can build and bring to the world as Mozilla, makers of Firefox. My career has been all startups, a mix of venture-backed, a mix of bootstrapped, a mix of failures, a mix of success. I've had a number of exits. My most recent company was acquired by Mozilla, and how I landed here. What Alistair was mentioning earlier with my previous startup was Tempo, acquired by Salesforce, was there for a bit. But yeah, I consider myself deep in startup, VC, that whole sort of universe. And so looking forward to chat.
Well, great. Well, at Mozilla, I just want to jump right into it. A browser, browsers are not only relevant today, it seems like they're top of mind today. What's your take on kind of browsers and where we stand today in this AI era?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you my own take, just
Yes,
because I'm
absolutely.
focused on the products outside of core Firefox. But I would say it's been amazing watching a category that's been pretty much boring for many years. Most consumers, frankly, wouldn't be able to distinguish between browser A and browser B unless you showed the logo. All of a sudden become one of the hottest categories right now. And that's not surprising. The way people are navigating the web is changing. The way web pages are constructed is changing. The way people are consuming content is changing. And so we're seeing a lot of original thinking in the market, whether it's from Chrome, whether it's from startups like Arc and Dia, Comet, OpenAI with Atlas, etc., thinking about what this sort of new experience can look like. And that's presented some great opportunities for Firefox as well. I think it's a wild time, but it feels like I know I wasn't at Mozilla obviously at that time, but the late 90s when Firefox and the browser wars first began, it feels like it's starting up again.
Yeah, it sure does. And a lot of that is because of AI. AI is replacing search as kind of the go-to. Is that what you're
I think there's a couple
suggesting?
things.
Yeah.
One, how do people consume content? Historically, you go to search, you get a bunch of links, you click a link, go read a web page. Now people are going directly to AI chat and asking for a synthesis.
Yeah.
So are they even visiting the source website? Of
Mhm.
course, we should fully expect that a lot of those AI chat experiences right now, they're multimodal input. You ask a prompt, you upload an image, you get text back. But eventually you might get an app back, you might get a website back, right? So you're going to get multimodal input and output, right? So just sort of the consumption behavior has changed. The cost of producing content has never been so low. Like, it was actually work to create a long form video not too long ago, but now I can spin up a 20-second video with my own creative ideas and creative energy and put it out there. And this is effectively democratized content creation. And so we're just seeing a flood of creation at the top of the funnel. Often when people think of content, they think of multimedia, but we're seeing that with text too, right? Some 55% of the web now is AI generated, which is just remarkable. And to be clear, this is happening everywhere. Resumes to applications to you name it, right?
Right.
And then I think the
Entertainment.
third
Yeah.
bucket is, if you think about Web 2, Web 2 was a phenomenal time, like 2008, 2009. People discovered sort of web APIs, the creation of XML and JSON, and I'm probably getting the years, probably not precise, but
Right.
sort of notion that I could do a JSON request and send data and communicate between different web applications and different services. Incredible. Fast forward to today, we're seeing a closed web. People are becoming protective of their content. Things are going behind paywalls. Things are becoming authenticated. They know LLMs are crawling it. That obviously diminishes their ad revenue. They don't want to become just a source of data for an aggregator. And at the same time, we're seeing this emergence of headless browsers or agents or agent modes or whatever you want to call it, operators, whatnot,
Mhm.
that will effectively do work for you. So think about the most classic AI use case, which is almost the overused example, like book me a flight to San Jose. Now I can ask the agent and it will go and try to do this itself. But instead of integrating with the TripAdvisor API or integrating with the Travelocity API or whatever it might be, it's going to actually do it like a human. Visit the web page, click through and do it. And so in some ways, the agent mode is the new API of the internet, right? Because you no longer need a deterministic API behind the scenes. You can just have this AI read the web page and do it. And of course, that also means ad dollars are going to disappear, right? That's not a human looking at your web page. And so I feel like there's just so much stuff in flux, the entire monetization ecosystem, the consumption ecosystem, the creator ecosystem, that it's just has created a lot of opportunity, but also FOMO. And so people are spending wildly to try to figure out and capture mind share because we don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah, you mentioned agentic tech and agents, and we're seeing. I talk to a lot of founders who are building agents, and I talk to a lot of investors and others about agents in the enterprise and using agents. I mean, what's your take there? Are we getting it right? Are people? Is it working? All these agents in companies?
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple things. I think the word agent itself has become a little bit overloaded.
Okay.
Like sometimes we're seeing people call something very rules based, like
Hmm.
school IFTTT or Zapier kind of flow. If I get this email from so and so, move it to the spam folder. Like that's not an agent. Like yeah, it's like a rules based trigger, whatever you want to call it. But people are calling everything an agent. That said, I think one thing I like to think about when I think of AI in general, it's my own 95% rule, which is we should assume AI is 95% correct, right? So if it's like generating content, that's probably acceptable. And then you could bring in human in the loop to review, edit, improve, whatnot. But if it's like book my meeting on a calendar or drive my car, like that's not good enough. Like you mess up a meeting in my calendar, that's a real problem. That's a lead lost, a sales call, whatever it might be. It damages, trust and whatnot. A lot of these agents that are getting deployed in the enterprise, they're figuring it out, right? So they're building an agency saying, hey, can I automate this workflow? And then they're realizing like, oh, it's not working 15% of the time or 20% of the time. And so we are seeing, and I think Salesforce came out with some data, they are seeing something like 70, 80% of these agents simply failing. Like they're just not good enough. And so there's a lot of this experimentation going on. That being said, the opportunity for workflow automation, which has historically been a lot of systems integrators, outsourced developers, you know, professional services, whatever you want to call it, to automate that is immense. And part of the reason is most of these experiences don't need to have perfect UI. They're internal workflow, right? So it doesn't need to be like perfectly QA'd and production scale. I mean, obviously it needs to be production scale, but it doesn't need to be like, open on the internet, public facing, et cetera, et cetera. And so it really blends itself well into generative AI and generative code and whatnot, right? And so I think you're seeing an arms race now across the board, right? OpenAI launched I forget what their product is called, but an agent sort of builder. Google has Agent Space. Zapier has sort of pivoted into agents. N8N has emerged, focused on agents. Like everyone's sort of looking at how we can create more automation to help drive agents. I actually think the big issue is enterprise has a much better idea on how they're thinking about workflows that they want to automate. But the holy grail here is the consumer. And I think that's where it's been harder because consumers don't think in that way. They do something and they don't think about, oh, I could automate this. That's not obvious, right? Because
Mhm.
it's really uncomfortable to change behavior. And so I think that presents its opportunity, but it's absolutely a horse race.
Yeah, when people are talking about AI agents, it seems like a lot of them are kind of mixing it up with, AGI, talking about that, for instance. Are we getting to that point?
Agents, whether we call them agents or whether we call them like really incredible user experiences on top of workflow automation, those are happening. Those are real.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can go in and prompt a workflow like I've done here, even in my work at Mozilla, to look at inbound email, determine if it's customer support related, then look at the support articles for that product to then generate a draft reply to then give it to me for a human in the loop review to then send. The fact that I can do that through, not at one shot, but through a little bit of back and forth through prompting is incredible, right? That stuff's here to stay. And frankly, the real unlock in organizations is not about building agents; it's about unlocking that mindset shift to think about how I can drive more automation and acceleration at all levels, right? People are talking about it, but it's just again, it's really uncomfortable to even think in that way because it's so disruptive. It's always disruptive to do something differently. I think when it comes to AGI, you know, there's two benchmarks here. So you might have heard the term AGI, and then there's another term called ASI. And AGI is sort of like, do we get to a point where the human becomes the conductor, right? So I basically have a set of agents and I delegate things to them and they go and get work done for me. So you could think of it like a team of interns is often the example that's used. And the reason they use interns is because they say like they need a lot of oversight and you need to provide explicit instructions and whatnot. And that's not necessarily true depending on the use case, right? ASI is the other way around. ASI is where the AI is simply better at strategy than us. It has better taste than us, and it actually delegates the task to us. Humans become the agents, and the AI becomes the conductor, right? So it's like a complete like role reversal, right? My opinion here is it's a completely moot conversation, and the reason I say that is everything always comes back, and this is just me and product sense and like cognitive empathy and just being a
Hmm.
product person. How does it make me feel? Like that's really the question. And if you take the average consumer, they feel like superhumans, right? They're using ChatGPT in their pocket or whatever it might be, Gemini, and they feel incredible. Like there's a question that comes up at a dinner table and they don't know a lot about it. They're secretly pulling out their phone and they're reading about it. And now they're asking really good questions, right? Now, certainly that doesn't meet the technical definition of AGI, but in my opinion, this is the Neuralink. We just thought it was going to be a device, but it's actually in our pocket.
I come across a lot of fear about jobs. Or should people be concerned? And then maybe the correct way is saying, should people behind desk be concerned as well as the frontline worker, the hourly employee?
Yeah,
Who should be most concerned about their
I have a
jobs?
couple thoughts here. So there's a few things going on. Without a doubt, there's automation coming to the workplace. The jobs are shifting, no doubt.
Hmm.
I would be deeply concerned if you are an individual contributor, or just frankly, IC or not IC. If you're in a a white collar job in an organization,
Hmm.
you are not using AI to think about how to accelerate. So there's definitely this mindset shift that you have to go through, which is how can I replace my low leverage work with high leverage tasks so I can focus on taste and strategy. At
Hmm.
the same time, companies are not thinking smaller, right? Like historically, different FANG companies almost kind of stayed in their lanes, right? Obviously, Google probably the most branched out and they have things everywhere, but like they they bumped heads in certain areas, but you didn't think of Google as doing a social network, and you didn't think of Facebook doing a video service, and you didn't think of Netflix launching a phone devices, right? But now, because we have fractional expertise at our fingertips, and basically it's democratized, and everyone can simply go faster, I think the aspirations are even bigger, right? So we think of companies as thinking of like, how do I become a unicorn? That's just simply too small. It's no longer how to become a $1 billion company. It's not even how to become a $1 trillion company. It's how do you become a $10 trillion company. And so when you start thinking in those kinds of numbers, you're going to be hiring like crazy. So I don't anticipate companies simply doing less work. They're going to be doing more work, right? They want to get more done. They're going to hire more, but there's a process here. And the first step is figure out where there's places I can optimize and automate. And yes, that is resulting in unfortunate, we're seeing layoffs and people made redundant and whatnot. At the same time, there's how can we go faster and how we can build more. Now, I think the other part of this question, which is where people are struggling, is getting hired has completely changed. It used to be expertise. You've been doing this thing for so long, you're a domain expert. And part of the problem with that is tech has been training specialists for 20 plus years, right? Like if you worked at any company, like 25 years ago, there was not a PM, marketing manager, designer, QA, SRE, DevOps, whatever, all this back end, front end, all those different roles. There was just kind of like a PM and like a business person, like an engineer, like, right. But then over 25 years, we have been hyper specializing. And now the generalists are being rewarded. And so in some ways, it's the startup entrepreneurs' time to shine because often people who work within startups are generalists because now AI can play that fractional role. And so hiring has shifted. It's a lot more about archetypes, mindsets, thinking about how to use AI to accelerate, generalists willing to learn on the fly, okay to disrupt their workflow, etc. And so I think this is causing a lot of pain in the hiring funnel. And then of course, it also doesn't help that the tools that most companies use for hiring are just completely broken. They were not built for a Gen AI era where people are using agents to create hundreds of derivative resumes based on the posted job and to then automatically submit. So in some ways, every role is getting every applicant on the internet, right? And so when the top of the funnel has 10,000 applicants, how is a recruiter to determine who to talk to, right? And when every resume beats every keyword filter, how do you decide how to filter, right? So the entire hiring process is broken, which is part of the problem. But my general macro take is yes, there's a transitory period here, but we're going to go bigger.
I love that you just went right in and talked about generalist versus specialist. And Fast Company recently did a story on the the advantages to being multi-hyphenate, to have, like you said, to have general abilities, to be able to be a leader, a coach, have marketing expertise, doing all those things. Is that the key to surviving in the AI era, being a generalist?
There's actually a term, I actually gave a whole talk about
Yeah.
this on Maven, and then later a talk on Reforge called the Super IC, the Super Individual Contributor. And I think, again, I think never before, like, I'm not saying years of experience doesn't matter. Like, taste is still a fundamental part of determining what we should do, and judgment, and some sense, right? A sensibility. And for sure, if we went and plotted decisions made by different people within organizations, there are people who simply make more right decisions than wrong decisions over time. Figuring that out has been like the holy grail question and very hard to figure out. Nobody's been able to figure it out. It's not correlated with classes or certifications or years of experience. They're just simply people who make better decisions. So I think, forgot the original question.
It was about generalist versus
Oh,
specialist.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
being a generalist a key to surviving in this
Yeah, yeah.
AI era?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think what's happening now is, and as I alluded to this, the archetype has shifted, right? We're looking for high agency, people
Mhm.
who are comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because you in AI, you have to be willing to constantly change your workflow. And one of the, just a sidebar,
Go for it.
people who've worked in tech have been comfortable with this. Like, people who've worked in tech know programming languages change, technology changes. Like, it's shocking. Like, you just look at the HR tools and how they've changed over 20 years, right? People use different tools. And so I think a lot of hiring is going to shift to these archetypes that are high agency, can demonstrate good taste and sensibility. But the need for hyper specialists, they're not going to go away, but it's changing. You don't need 10 of them necessarily. Maybe you need one of them, right, on staff, right? But we need more generalists. And then we're also seeing a bleeding of the layers, right? Historically, you think about a typical organizational design, you had
Mhm.
functional orgs or you had sort of general manager type orgs. But people kind of stayed in their lanes. Like, PMs did product work, but when it came to pricing, they might go talk to product marketing. And when it came to sales, they'd go talk to the sales team. And when it came to messaging, they'd go talk to the communications team, right? Now, those lanes are blurring. This is, again, is really uncomfortable. So I think there's still some unknowns and to be determines on what this new organizational design looks like. But what I've been advocating is that everyone within an organization needs to shift into this mindset of becoming a super individual contributor, needs to be thinking about how I can automate my low leverage tasks, like a super IC, and needs to be able to operate at that level irrespective of your level within the organization. Whether you're a VP, you're still a builder. Whether you're a CEO, you're still a builder. Whether you're, a fresh IC, you're a builder, right? We're all shifting to builders.
Amazing. And I guess what's so amazing to me about it is that kind of we're living through it. It's an incredible point in history. Do you have any? What does your crystal ball say? I guess, Raj. Where are we
Well,
going to be in 5 years?
Satya had this incredible quote that I thought made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He said, this AI era could be on par with the Industrial Revolution.
Hmm.
And he had measured the Industrial Revolution as something like, whether the GDP grows by X
Hmm.
multiple, like 4X or 5X or 10X, then, and that's what we need to determine. In a typical Gartner sort of cycle, we might be going through a little bit of a trough right now, which is, it may sound crazy because people think we're still climbing the curve. I'm sort of like, we're entering the trough. Like, people are realizing, like, okay, what's working, what's not working. But like, I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to accelerate. All right. And I think I think the piece that a lot of people forget is they try something 3 months ago, but they don't try it again. But it's actually substantially better today than it was 3 months ago. And so the pace of all of this is improving. And if you're just looking at sort of LLM and the research side of things, yes, maybe LLM has some macro, like, just we can't get past this certain level of improvement or whatnot. But there's so much stuff around the LLM that they can improve, right? Like getting better at understanding what you're asking and then routing to the right, specialized LLM, like finely tuned LLM, or routing to the right deterministic API, or getting better about evaluating the output and then determining what's the best way to present that, right? So there's so much stuff, scaffolding, or whatever you want to call it, around it, and orchestration, that the experience can like 10x, even if the base technology or LLM is like the same, right? It's like you have the Chrome browser, you have the rendering
Yeah.
engine, or you have the Firefox browser, you have the Gecko engine, but then you have all the shell and scaffolding around it that continues to improve.
Uh, want to address the founders in the audience, and you've worked on AI and founded AI companies. What advice do you have for today's entrepreneur?
God, that's another that's a big question. I think
It is.
a few things here. I think one, particularly first time entrepreneurs, there is a lot of tech before the problem, right? So they kind of lead in with AI. There's sort of a need or desire, like, oh, it has to be AI. They build the
Yeah.
AI and then they forget like what the job to be done is. I see this so much because I've done it myself. I've been there. I've been doing startups since masters. I've dropped, my whole career. And so I always remind people, like, make sure to take a step back once in a while. Like, what is the job to be done? And then, do we even need to use AI to solve this? Like, is there a faster way to solve this, right? Because there's a natural technical, like, sunk cost as it comes to sort of, I built all this tech, oh, I have to use it. And then there's this additional thing that people don't think about. There's actually sunk cost in product. There's like product debt, independent of technical debt, where like the leader is like, oh, I did all this spec work and I don't want that to all sync, right? And so like that's sort of like one thing I think founders should think about as they're entering this thing.
Yeah, winding down, Raj. Any final thoughts?
The number one question I get is, or number one thing I hear, it's very funny. It's like, oh, I have this idea and I want to go build it, but I'm going to wait
Yeah,
till I have a second kid, or I'm going to wait till like, I get my next earnout, or well, who knows, right? Like something. And I'm like, dude, there's like never a good time. Like, I don't care if you've got like 4,000 things going on. Like, if the itch is there, go do it, right? And so like, my advice to especially the founders here, like, if you want to build something, go build it. It's never been easier to build before. The final thing I have to plug, I work
go
on
for it.
SMB products at Mozilla. Please go check out Solo. We're doing stuff for AI website, for small business entrepreneurs. It's an AI website builder, and we have a number of other products in that suite as well.
Yeah, how do people find that out? Just type in Solo and
Yeah, you can search for Mozilla Solo. You can go to soloist.ai. And I'm pretty much all over the internet. You can find me Twitter,
yeah.
Threads, and whatever.
Well, Raj Singh, yes, you are all over the internet, and thankfully we've had you here for some time. Really appreciate your thoughts. Great to hear from you and great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Alistair. Enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. That was Raj Singh of Mozilla. So if you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe to the Venture Variety Show. Leave a review, drop a comment, and share this episode with someone who cares about startups and storytelling. And if you have ideas for future guests or topics, especially having to do with AI, startups, and storytelling, I'd love to hear from you. That's it for now. Thanks for tuning in.